And we are live. Who knows who will show up? I know everybody's at work. I'm normally at work right now. But just decided to do some hanging out this morning. Try to catch up with some comments, trying to do some other research. What's up, Ron? What's happening, brother? So I've just kind of been bouncing around through a few things today. And I'm gonna do some little things before I get this rolling too far. If I can figure out my butt from a hole in the ground, which I ain't done yet, but I'm working on it. Pin that. Just in case anybody wants to say hey. And I'm probably going to do some screen shares in a little bit and show off some of what I've been looking at this morning. And none of it's going to be exactly, fun. Because let's face it, we live in a crazy, crazy world right now. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Present. We is going to do a screen share with audio. And since Coop doesn't have all the cool, handy dandy streaming stuff down yet, we're going to do it the old school way like I've been doing, and we're just going to share the screen and we'll let it ride. Because why not? So I shot a video, which I actually opened it up on Instagram and let Instagram go live while I was sitting here recording this video for my channel this morning. Some of you guys might have seen the video hit already. I think it's up. I think it finally got done processing and all that good stuff. About all this domestic spying crap. Hey, Vanessa Kitty, what's happening? About all this domestic spying stuff and MVEs and domestic violent extremism and all this other crap. Now, the 118th Congress hasn't started yet, at least with anything going up on congress.gov or all that yet. So as far as I know, there are bills on track to be introduced, but nothing has really been introduced yet. But I do want to go back to this domestic spying bill or this domestic extremist crap. What's up, Tortown? The left has been pushing in this last Congress. And there's a bunch of just seriously screwy, crazy crap that they've been throwing against the wall. Well, that's the Keeping Americans Safe Act. This is their magazine ban restriction federal bill. And which is so fun about this is they want to outlaw any of us from having 30-round mags. But of course, they leave carve-outs for law enforcement, the government, ex-law enforcement. So you got to be part of the party to actually be able to own these items. This is another little handy-dandy spying bill under the guise of domestic extremism. This is the HR 5746. Now, this is the government working with financial institutions to track gun purchases under the guise of domestic terrorism and violent extremists. Another little handy dandy bill. But let's listen to not to ruin all you guys' day, but you guys know me. I love to share. And if I'm dealing with a pain, I might as well share it with you guys. Let's listen to Dick Durbin actually defending this domestic spying bill. Well, let's see what old Dickie Durbin's got to say. And I'll let this play. If I can help myself, I'll let it play. If not, I'm going to stop and point out the fact this guy is a complete douchebag.
Consider.
All right, let me know if you guys can hear this. I should have everything on, so give me a 1 in the chat. Make sure you can hear this guy.
H.R. 350, which is legislation which I introduced some time ago. I want to describe it because it's been inaccurately described before, and let members know what they're voting on. First, what does it relate to? Domestic terrorism. Is that a federal crime? You bet it is. And this particular bill makes reference to that crime. Hate crimes refers to that too. Is that a real crime? It's a federal crime. And we refer specifically. So what new?
So I couldn't even let that one go. Jesus Christ. I like that. Is that a real crime? It's a federal crime. Well, plenty of federal crimes aren't real crimes, you jackass. Just saying.
Crimes are created in this bill? None, not one. What we're doing is asking the federal agencies who have the responsibility of national security to give us timely reports on the incidents of domestic terrorism. And we say to them, there are categories which the FBI has already established of domestic terrorism. In those categories, I'd like to spell out a couple of them to you so it's pretty clear what we're going after here. Racially and ethnically motivated violent extremism, anti-government, anti-authority violent extremism, animal rights, environmental violent extremism, abortion-related violent extremism, and others. So those are already categories of domestic terrorism that the FBI reports on.
And let's not forget, because I covered it in the video that I did for the channel this morning, the FBI has already been caught inflating the numbers on so-called domestic violent extremism, especially anti-authoritarian violent extremism, like you MVEs out there who actually believe in the Constitution. Bernie, what's up, brother? Hey, dude, hope you're feeling pretty good today, man.
What we are saying is give us those.
I say that, and then I play Dick Durbin talking. Oh, God, man, I'm sorry.
Reports in a timely fashion so we can see the incidents of these forms of extremism and the commission of crimes. But there is one correction that we're making that is very important. During the Trump administration, they eliminated reference in this list of categories of domestic terrorism of white supremacist activity. The reason why it's important for us to include that is that we have the sworn testimony of the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation that this is a category of crime and terrorism in America that is metastasizing, his word, metastasizing. And so we believe it's important that we be given information about the incidents of violent extremism, domestic terrorism, that relates to this type of activity, this white supremacy. I will tell you, it's not an imagined crime. We see the reality of it way too often. We just saw it 2 weeks ago in Buffalo, New York. That shooter put his so-called manifesto on the internet and declared, among other things, his support for the Great Replacement Theory. The Great Replacement Theory is a thinly veiled white supremacist theory that tries to suggest that immigrants to America are somehow only arriving at the expense of those already here, particularly white Americans. That sort of theory has been out there since the days of the Ku Klux Klan and maybe even before it, but it is white supremacy. It inspired this man to do terrible things in Buffalo and kill innocent people at that grocery store. So we're asking the FBI, give us this information. We'll draw conclusions as we will, but that's basically it. No new crime is created, and nor is any new authority being created in the process. I think that is a critical element. But there's one other thing that is part of this exercise this morning in voting for H.R. 350. The majority leader, Senator Schumer, after the events in Uvalde, Texas, declared that we are going to try to reach out on a bipartisan basis to come up with legislation to deal with gun safety and safety in schools. His first effort to do this is this bill. What we're voting on is a motion to proceed to the bill. He has invited colleagues on a bipartisan.
So wait a second. You're tying in the Uvalde shooter to white supremacy, even though this wasn't a white guy, a very disturbed individual. You're also tying in the Buffalo shooter, who was a leftist and his manifesto stated so. It's just like taking 30 pounds of shit, throwing it in a 5-pound bag, and shaking it up. It's going to get everywhere.
Partisan basis to come forward and to offer their amendments in the field of gun safety and school safety. That's why this motion to proceed is more than just the bill I described. It is an opportunity for amendments on the floor. This morning I did an interview with CNN, and they talked about the fact that we're leaving for a week for Memorial Day to honor our veterans and be home and then return. Why aren't we staying and working? Well, here's a chance for us to make it clear that we are going to work on what happened in these terrible tragedies at Uvalde, Texas, and in Buffalo, New York, and so many others. So I'm appealing to my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle. If you have any ideas, and I hope you do, for gun safety, school safety, and to make this a safer nation, this is the vehicle to do it. A yes vote on the motion to proceed to H.R. 350 is your opportunity to open a process where we can consider amendments. Senator Schumer was very explicit. He invited Democrats as well as Republicans to come forward with their best ideas on a bipartisan basis. And isn't that what the people of the country are actually asking for more than anything? That we roll up our sleeves and face this challenge, which has taken so many innocent lives. In the newspaper yesterday, in the New York Times, they did a feature on those wonderful little kids and the teachers who lost their lives in Uvalde, Texas. Heartbreaking to see those kids, those beautiful little children, and to realize that they're no longer with us and that their families are grieving in a way they never imagined they would. Isn't it up to us to do something about it rather than just issue press releases? Isn't it up to us as legislators to legislate, to try to find solutions? This opportunity, the motion to proceed, opens the door to that possibility. We can return the week after the Memorial Day recess and start in earnest considering amendments offered by Democrats and Republicans which deal with this issue. We owe the American people that.
Yeah, I got you, Vanessa.
This job to legislate, not just to give speeches, but to change the laws in this country to make it safer. This is our chance to do it. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, vote for H.R. 350. This is an important bill in and of itself, but equally important is the fact that it opens a process America is longing to hear that we take seriously. I urge my colleagues to support the motion to proceed on H.R. 350. I yield the floor.
On a party line vote, the Senate fell short of the 60 vote.
I swear I covered this early on in my channel. I'm pretty sure I did. Oh, God, come on. Let's thin out some results here because I've been bouncing through a bunch of stuff. And sometimes this thing can be so freaking insane trying to pull up bills. I'd have to pull it up a different or search for it a little bit more because it's just going to feed me a bunch of horse shit unless I get the search terms down just right. Let's look at something else though. La-da-da-da. Yeah, this is the kind of crap that they use to strip you of all of your rights and then tell you you have to take it. Terror threats, domestic terrorism prevention bill. There was another freaking hearing that I had pulled up earlier. Come on, damn it. Convention, Rand Paul, domestic. Of course, it's not going to pull it up now. I had the whole freaking hearing pulled up earlier. Da-da-da. Is that the one? This was November. Oh, that's when it last aired. I can't remember when exactly this one actually aired. And I can't remember whether I covered this one. But this is one where Ray and all these jackasses are talking about all this violent extremism.
Hey guys, we are giving out a ton of DeWalt samples today. Just fill out our quick 2-minute survey and we'll ship.
We've made and what more we can do. Meanwhile,
Come on back up.
we recognize the witnesses, their predecessors, and men and women of their agencies for their tireless effort.
And this is just another dog and pony show that these guys put up to grandstand on a bunch of shit to convince people that they need to give up more of their freedoms and their rights so the government can protect them. And I'm here to tell you now, government is not the answer to the problem. Government is the problem. I've said it many times. This is the government giving you cancer and then telling you that more cancer is going to cure the cancer.
To prevent another 9/11 style attack. That said, we know the threat posed by foreign terrorist organizations has not gone away. It has evolved and persisted, just as our efforts to combat it have. At the same time, domestic violent extremists now pose the greatest threat to our homeland. The Biden administration has put new focus on combating the rising threat, issuing the first ever national strategy for countering domestic terrorism, establishing a domestic terrorism analytic branch within DHS.
Now, understand, this is all done while they are taking people from the infamous January 6th erection and keeping these people in jail without representation, without any kind of due process, and then basically threatening them to make them take plea deals. And if you read the pleas like I have read, they're complete horseshit. But hey, if the government jails you and then tells you that even if you do go to a jury trial, that they are merely going to pack that jury with a bunch of people that are going to convict you for every single charge, what do? Yeah, Barnaby, you're right, man. No amount of this legislation is going to stop evil people. It's just not going to. You could ban every gun in the United States. They'll use bombs. They'll use clubs. They'll use trucks. I've used the example, Nice, France. A guy killed 84 people on a boardwalk in less than like 8 seconds with a truck. Look at this jackass on a small scale, just went through sentencing. Killed 5 people, just drove his SUV through a crowd and wounded I don't know how many others. Government is the problem.
His Office of Intelligence and Analysis and designating domestic violent extremism as a national priority area for Homeland Security grants. More work remains as extremists are increasingly willing to engage in targeted violence, whether at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, a Walmart in El Paso, or a supermarket in Buffalo. I hope to speak to our witnesses today about their assessment of the.
Now, it's very telling. I don't know how much of this I'll make it through today. I'm just playing around before work. But it's very telling that the instances that he mentions, he neglects to mention anything done by groups like the Black Hebrew Israelites or the new Black Panther Party or the Not Fucking Around Coalition. And it neglects all that.
The current threat from our terrorism and targeted violence and what their agencies are doing to protect the homeland. Beyond terrorism, I remain concerned about cyber threats, particularly from Russia, China.
And is it just me, the more these folks talk about protecting the homeland, the more they remind me of people that used to wear these funny little symbols all the time and did this funny kind of straight out arm salute.
China and Iran. In response to these threats, the Biden administration has raised our cybersecurity posture by issuing an executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity, leading global efforts to confront ransomware threats, and launching a groundbreaking public-private collaboration to help secure industrial
Okay,
control
shut up.
systems.
Let's hear some more shit.
As our nation faces these growing and continuous changing threats posed by foreign adversaries, criminal and terror organizations, and the crisis at the southwest border, to name a few. In the first 2 years, the burden that they shoulder, my heart goes out to the family, only partisan perception, right or wrong, of the Bureau. And I say that from someone who, and with that happy note, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen,
Foreign terrorism threat posed.
thank you much. Other members of the committee are reminded that under committee rules, opening statements may be submitted for the record. Members are also reminded that the committee will operate according to the guidelines laid out by the chairman and ranking member.
Get to the witnesses, you jackass.
2021 colloquy regarding remote procedures. I
Yeah.
welcome our panel of witnesses.
All
Our first
hail.
witness is Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security. Our next witness will be Christopher Wray, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And our third and final witness will be Christine Avisade, Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Without objection, the witness's full statement will be included in the record. I now ask Secretary Mayorkas to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Katko, distinguished members of this committee, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. Next week marks the 20th anniversary of the Homeland Security Act being signed into law. This act brought together many components of the federal government to safeguard the United States against foreign terrorism in the wake of the devastation wrought on September 11th, 2001. It remains the largest reorganization of the federal government's national security establishment since 1947. It is a testament to the grave threat we faced as a nation from terrorism brought to our shores by foreign actors and foreign terrorist organizations. Congress created a department that has significantly reduced the foreign terrorism threat posed to the homeland.
Mr. Secretary, will you pull your mic a little closer to you?
How's that?
Well, all right. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, you and me both,
Congress
Barnaby.
created a department that has significantly reduced the risk foreign terrorism poses to the homeland by increasing our capacity to prepare for and respond to those events. Foreign terrorist organizations remain committed to attacking the United States from within and beyond our borders. They use social media platforms to amplify messaging intended to inspire attacks in the homeland. They have adapted to changing security environments, seeking new and innovative ways to target the United States. The evolving terrorism threat to the homeland now includes lone actors, fueled by a wide range of violent extremist ideologies and grievances, including domestic violent extremists, US-based individuals who seek to further political or social goals wholly or in part through violence, without direction or inspiration from a foreign terrorist group or foreign power. From cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure to increasing destabilizing efforts by hostile nation states, the threats facing the homeland have never been greater or more complex. Flouting internationally accepted norms of responsible behavior in cyberspace, our adversaries, hostile nations and non-nation state cyber criminals, continue to advance in capability and sophistication. Their methods vary, but their goals of doing harm are the same. Hostile nations like Russia, the People's Republic of
Yeah,
China.
yeah. Don't
Iran,
worry about the
North
southern
Korea,
border.
and cyber criminals around the world continue to sharpen their tactics and create more adverse consequences. Their ransomware attacks target our financial institutions, hospitals, pipelines, electric grids, and water treatment plants.
Now, why is he going through all of this bullshit when this hearing was really about domestic violent extremism? He's mentioning all these other countries, all these other things. All this, he gets to social media. Why is it like you can go on social media and you can find ISIS and Iran with social media accounts? Yeah, you can find all these social media accounts from people who are actually sponsoring terror. But they'll get rid of my little white ass because I had nerve enough to question parents having their kids at drag shows. Woohoo, spooky me.
Attempting to wreak havoc on our daily lives. They exploit the integrated global cyber ecosystem to sow discord, undermine democracy, and erode trust in our institutions, public and private. These cyber operations threaten the economic and national security of every American and many others around the world. In particular, China is using its technology to tilt the global playing field to its benefit. They leverage sophisticated cyber capabilities to gain access to the intellectual property, data, and infrastructure of American individuals and businesses. Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine intensified the risk of a cyber attack, impacting our critical infrastructure earlier this year. Nation-state aggression is creating a heightened risk of chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear-related threats to Americans as well. While fast-emerging technologies like unmanned aerial systems, artificial intelligence, internet communications, and cryptocurrencies are helping societies be more productive, creative, and entrepreneurial, they also are introducing new risks. Transnational criminal organizations are deploying these technologies to commit a wide array of crimes as they continue to grow in size, scale, sophistication, and lethality. With respect to unmanned aerial systems in particular, it is vital that Congress act before the end of this year to extend our CUAS authorities in order to protect the American people from malicious drone activity. The risk of targeted violence perpetrated by actors abroad and at home is substantial. Emerging technology platforms allow individuals and nation states to fan the flames of hate and personal grievances to large audiences.
Now, see, this is where we get to the social media. This is where we get to the, oh, you are promoting hate. If you disagree with government, if you disagree with more government control, you're a violent militant extremist if you simply think that, hey, maybe the government shouldn't be able to scrape every bit of my social media and monitor financial accounts and things of that nature. Throwing it out there. See, they'll cover this up in this big blanket. And unless you actually flip back that blanket and do a little work, yeah, it all sounds like, oh, it's for the homeland. Jawohl.
And are encouraging people to commit violent acts. Those driven to violence are targeting critical infrastructure.
Bernie, you're 100%
soft
right.
targets, faith-based institutions, institutions of higher education, racial and religious minorities, government facilities and personnel, including law enforcement and the military, and perceived ideological opponents. Addressing these threats requires a whole-of-society approach across federal, state, and local governments, the private sector, nonprofits, academia, and, most importantly,
Hey,
every
what's
citizen.
up?
Congress may not have predicted the extent of today's threat environment when our department
Safety
was created
dive.
20
What's
years
happening,
ago,
brother?
but our mission has never been more vital. Our components have never collaborated more closely. Our extraordinary workforce has never been more capable, and our nation has never been more prepared. We must harness the same deliberative and bipartisan spirit in which this department was created to combat the vast threats Americans face today. I look forward to answering your question.
So 20 years ago, we created this big department, the Homeland Security Department, where we threw all of these agencies all under one roof and under the guise of, hey, we're going to communicate better to stop terrorists from inflicting terrorist acts on the United States. A lot of what this has been used for is to spy on everyday Americans, collect data, and then turn around and call us violent militant extremists because we simply don't agree with the policies that our government is pushing. It really is that simple.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Director Ray to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Katko, members of the committee. I'm honored to be here today on behalf of the FBI's 38,000 men and women to discuss some of the most.
Yeah. When I actually do start doing all my FFL stuff, yeah, I'm going to go 0702 that way I can be a manufacturer. Because I do want to be able to manufacture firearms for sale, but I also want to be able to do some fun stuff on the side. It just sucks that I have to go blow the government so that I can do something which is completely no danger to anybody else on this fucking planet.
Pressing threats facing our homeland. When it comes to our current threat landscape, what makes our current situation, at least in my career, unique is, and particularly serious, I would add, is the fact that we have so many different threat areas all elevated at the same time. And I'm proud of the work that the FBI's agents, analysts, and professional staff are doing all over the country and all over the world every single day to rise to those challenges and to protect the American people. Protecting the American people from terrorist attack remains the FBI's #1 priority. As I've said before, the greatest threat we face on the terrorism front here in the homeland is from what are effectively lone actors or small cells. Whether it's a domestic violent extremist acting in furtherance of some ideological goal, or a homegrown violent extremist looking to advance the interests of a foreign terrorist organization, these actors often move quickly from radicalization to action and often use easily obtainable weapons. Think a gun, a knife, a car, a crude IED.
Now, be aware, people, you're being radicalized if you're listening to me, because I believe this government's completely full of shit. And they have been for a very long time.
Against.
Oh, and by the way, the video that I did this morning, this guy's already been proven to be a goddamn liar, inflating numbers, but he's still the director of the FBI. While the FBI runs around for Joe Biden and puts his political enemies in jail. What's up, Night Strike? So yeah, I mean, the FBI is just being used as
soft targets,
strong arm of the Biden administration right now, and I'm expected to believe this guy has any credibility whatsoever.
Which is just intelligence
Warsaw, what's up?
For everyday people living everyday lives. Overseas, ISIS and Al-Qaeda still aim to inspire, to plan, and to launch attacks against the United States and our allies, both abroad and
I gotta get more coffee. I'll be right
at
back.
home. As the Zawahiri strike this summer in Kabul reinforces the threat of foreign terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda attempting to reconstitute in Afghanistan following our withdrawal remains very real. And our ability to gather valuable intelligence on the ground inside Afghanistan has been reduced. And that's just a reality. All of that places a premium on our continued collaboration with our partners, both within the U.S. government and internationally. We've got to stay on the balls of our feet and use all of the tools available to us. On top of that, countries like China, Russia.
Well, yeah, so I don't know whether you were in here when I said it earlier, but yeah, I used the attack in Nice, France as a freaking example all the time. Dude killed 84 people in just a matter of seconds. What people don't realize is that truck that he was driving was loaded with guns and explosives, hand grenades and shit like that. But the truck was more expedient at that time. Hey, I didn't steal nobody's shirt. My wife steals mine all the time, but
Iran and North Korea are growing more aggressive, brazen, and capable. They're coming at us from all angles to undermine our core democratic institutions, our national security, and our rule of law. Of those countries, the greatest long-term threat to our nation's ideas, innovation, and economic security, our national security, is that from China. The Chinese government aspires to equal or surpass the U.S. as a global superpower and influence the world with a value system shaped by undemocratic, authoritarian ideals. But we are confronting that threat head on. Just 3 weeks ago, for example, we unsealed charges against 13 individuals, 10 of them Chinese intelligence officers. And
see, anytime these asshats mention democracy, it's because they want democracy, they want mob rule, and they don't like the fact that we do have a republic to where they would be put in check otherwise. So if people want to ask me whether I'm an enemy of democracy, yeah, I am. I am an enemy of mob rule. I don't believe if you get 99% of people in a room, you can vote to take the 1% shit. I just don't. Rights are rights. No matter whether 99% of the people on this planet like them, rights are still rights.
Government officials for a variety of criminal efforts to exert influence right here in the U.S. to benefit Beijing. And the FBI has scores of investigations open into the China threat in all 56 of our field offices. On the cyber front, China's vast hacking program is the world's largest, and they have stolen more of Americans' personal and business data than every other nation combined. But of course, China is not our only challenge in cyberspace, not even close. The FBI's cyber investigations are growing in frequency, scale, and complexity consistent with the evolution of the threat. We're investigating over 100 different ransomware variants, and each one of those with scores of victims, as well as
I'm so glad that chick lost to Marco Rubio, and I don't even like
by both cyber criminals and nation states alike. And it's becoming more and more difficult to discern where the cyber criminal activity ends and the nation state activity begins.
You'll be in the background listening, I'll be in the foreground cussing. It's a normal day.
Just last month, for example, we announced the indictment of 3 Iranian
what's happening, brother?
for their roles in a multi-year scheme to compromise the networks of hundreds of organizations, many of which offer services.
Dude, if I was in Florida, I'd have been voting for him, and I can't stand him.
To those sorts of actors, nothing is off limits, not even, for example, Boston Children's Hospital, which they set their sights on in the summer of 2021.
Now, again, most of this hearing is about pushing domestic spying bills, this whole MVE, domestic violent extremist crap, and they're talking about everything but that for the most part. And then they sneak in this little kick about, hey, social media and radicalization.
Now, fortunately, before they could successfully launch their attack,
well, I'm glad I could pretty well ruin your day, Chris.
Partner and working closely with the hospital, we were able to identify and defeat the threat, protecting both the network and the sick children who depend on it. Our opponents in this space are relentless, so we've got to keep responding in kind. And I can assure you that we're going to continue to be aggressive and creative as we run joint sequenced operations with our partners against these adversaries, removing their malware, taking down their botnets, and hunting them down all over the world. Now, that's just a snapshot of some of the many threats we're tackling, and doesn't even include things like our efforts to combat violent crime, where this summer, working with our state and local partners, we arrested on average 50 violent criminals every single day. Or our continued focus on human trafficking, where this August, through our annual Operation Cross Country, for instance, the FBI and our partners located more than 200 victims of human trafficking, many of them little kids. or the work of our transnational.
But we won't shut down the southern border while kids are trafficked across our southern border on an hourly basis. It's how disingenuous these people are.
Organized Crime Section that it's doing in partnership with agencies like DHS to investigate the movement of people, drugs, guns, and money into the United States across our southern border. The breadth and depth of the threats that the FBI's dedicated men and women are tackling each and
that's
every
funny,
day
huh? That
is
he won't
staggering.
mention stuff like that.
And I continue to be inspired by their commitment to our mission of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution. And I know we will continue to answer the call. So thank you again for having me here again today, and I'd be happy to address your questions.
Gentlemen, time has expired. Chair now recognizes Director Avezade to summarize her statement for 5 minutes.
Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Katko, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the overall terrorism landscape. Now, despite significant progress in diminishing the terrorist threat to the United States, the country continues to face a diversified, transnational, and in many ways unpredictable threat environment, both at home and abroad. An array of actors, whether foreign terrorist organizations, state sponsors of terrorism, or lone actors, are shaping the nature of today's threat. This changed environment exists amid an ongoing transition for the counterterrorism community, where CT, while critical, is one of many competing priorities that the U.S. national security community must be postured to address. In today's testimony, I'll start by giving an overview of the terrorist threat to the homeland. I'll turn to the overseas threat and then
Homeland,
with some
yahoo!
comments on the importance of our continued CT focus. Regarding the threat to the United States homeland, terrorist organizations such as ISIS
It's just
and
me, or is that a
Al-Qaeda
shadow on
remain
that chick's
committed to
nose, or
attacking
does
the
she
United
really have a
States.
mustache?
However, unlike 21 years ago, the threat today is more likely to take the form of an individual attacker inspired by these groups rather than a highly networked, hierarchically directed terrorist plot. In fact, since 9/11, 37 of the 45 ISIS or Al-Qaeda linked attacks in the homeland have been inspired by these groups rather than centrally managed by them.
Yeah, that's what I
This
thought.
trend toward lone actor threats inside the United States extends beyond ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It also characterizes the threat we face from domestic actors, such as racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, militia violent extremists, or anarchist violent extremists. In particular, the US-based racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, or REMV threat, has the most obvious links to transnational actors whose plots and professed ideology encourage mobilization to violence by those vulnerable to their messaging. This threat is fluid, it's fragmented, it lacks in hierarchical structures, and it has proponents around the globe and in the US framing actions around the concept of leaderless resistance. Transitioning to the overseas environment, Sunni and Shia-driven terrorist movements worldwide continue to dominate the threat to Americans. ISIS and Al-Qaeda continue to aspire to attack the US and other Western targets overseas, though they have been
Yeah,
more
kinda.
effective at pursuing operations against regional and local adversaries. For its part, ISIS in Iraq and Syria remains an intact, centrally led organization that will most likely continue to pose both a global threat and a local one, despite the death of its emir in February, Haji Abdullah. While significantly weaker than at its peak in 2015 and through 2017, ISIS leaders from Iraq and Syria have been successful at spurning branches and networks across Africa and as far as South and East Asia, with its two most effective branches currently operating out of West Africa and Afghanistan. Likewise, Al-Qaeda maintains its regional affiliate structure, positioned effectively in parts of North and East Africa, the Middle East, and to a lesser extent, South Asia. The July death of longtime Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri was a strategic and symbolic setback for Al-Qaeda, but it does not put an end to the organization. In particular, in the Middle East, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is a destabilizing actor in Yemen and remains among the most intrepid Al-Qaeda affiliates intent on attacking the United States homeland.
Let's get in some meats and taters.
Enterprise,
personal grievances, and
Enterprise at
Come
CT.
on.
Threat are you seeing from the lens of the FBI?
Well, certainly we have seen over the last several years, really going back to maybe the summer of 2019, an increase in domestic violent extremism. And we are concerned about the lethality, especially of racially motivated violent extremists, and then the spike that started in 2020 of anti-government, anti-authority violent extremism. And so we have very active investigations really all over the country through our joint terrorism task forces in all 56 field offices. And it is a growing problem. You know, this committee is well aware of the whole phenomenon of connecting the dots and the importance of that. It's the very reason why agencies like NCTC and DHS exist in many ways. But with the lone actors in these small cells, the real problem there is there are not a lot of dots out there to connect, and there's very little time in which to connect them. So that presents a whole new type of challenge for law enforcement and the intelligence community, and puts a premium on our engagement with the public, with our state and local law enforcement partners in particular, who really become the eyes and ears that are so critical, because any one of them could have the one dot that we need.
Ms. Abizaid, you talked about the pressure that we have applied to our international terrorist community and the results that have benefited from that pressure. Is it something that we need to increase the investment in that, or increase the relationships with other governments? How do you see that going forward?
I think a sustained investment in our international counterterrorism enterprise is very important to be able to sustain the pressure against international groups going forward. I agree with my colleagues' assessments here about the relative threat from domestic violent extremist actors here in the homeland versus international actors. Those international actors are continuing to plot, and if they had an opportunity to infiltrate the United States,
What's up, G23?
to exploit it. It's our international partnerships are.
Now, if you want to talk about international people funding domestic extremists, how much money do you think Antifa and BLM get from, and along with a lot of other leftist organizations, how much money do you think they get from international actors? And by the way, while we're thinking about this, how many times have you seen someone flying a Gadsden flag or something of that nature go out and burn a city down? Yeah, Warsaw, they're already here. Now, that's one thing about living in a free society. We're going to deal with threats like that. And we could deal with threats like that if they would, I don't know, control borders, maybe. And how about not focusing on people who aren't out there committing violent acts? Just a thought.
Array of law enforcement, intelligence, relationships, and capabilities that enable us to stay on top of this international threat, even as we're dealing with some of those dynamics that Director Wray talked about here in the homeland that make it difficult for us to deal with a lone actor threat.
Director Wray, about a third of the historically black colleges in this country over the last year have received bomb threats. Can you enlighten us on the FBI's attempt to mitigate or capture those individuals responsible for those threats?
Yes,
because
Mr.
she
Chairman,
more than
needless to
likely
say,
did.
we take these threats very seriously, and frankly, the idea of causing the fear and disruption that they have caused is just really outrageous and unacceptable. We have joint terrorism task forces working on it, 30 field offices, multiple headquarters divisions. It's very much ongoing. I think what I could say for purposes of today is that we've recently, with respect to the first big tranche of the threats, investigation has identified an underage, a juvenile subject, and because of the federal limitations on charging juveniles with federal crimes, we have worked with state prosecutors to ensure that that individual.
So, with all of these so-called bomb threats and everything called into these historically black colleges, he can give one example of some underage shithead doing it. Do you feel like you might be getting lied to here? Just thought.
Is charged under various other state offenses, which will ensure some level of restrictions and monitoring and disruption of his criminal behavior. Since that big tranche that we believe that individual was responsible for, there have been 2 other tranches, and we're very actively investigating those, but there's not much I can say on those ongoing active investigations, those other investigations at this time. But we've been very...
See, and this is the shit that they use a lot of these times. They will state something that's pretty much complete horseshit, and then they go, "We can't comment on it." Active investigations. Really? Yeah, Vegas. We're never going to hear anything about Vegas, and any more facts, investigations, nothing about Vegas.
Engaged with HBCUs all over the country. We've done sort of national conference calls and so forth with them to try to update them wherever we can. We recognize the fear and anger that this quite rightly causes in those communities, and we're determined to see this through.
Something real fast.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony today. And as you were speaking, it just occurred to me how important this committee is and how important each of your respective work is. And it's our job to do oversight, and sometimes it's unpleasant. But the bottom line is we must never forget that you're at the head of keeping this country safe. And I appreciate all the efforts of all of you. Sometimes you stumble like we all do, but it's always time to say thank you for what you do and how you do it. And, when you hear about all the threats, it's hard to really distinguish one as the ubiquitous threat. But it seems to me that one of the most pervasive threats that exists now that wasn't really on our radar 8 years ago when I came in to Congress was a cyber, especially agency, and making them called the quarterback on the domestic, and how well with the other agencies like the FBI in that realm is great. But when you have cyber attacks like on a water plant in Florida, which if successful would have killed thousands of people, you realize what a pervasive and probably the most ubiquitous threat we have in the United States is cyber. So in that realm, I'm very heartened to see how CISA has stepped
This isn't
up
the one I was
working
looking
in
for.
conjunction with the private sector as a partnership. It's not a regulatory type setting. It's more of a exchange of information and how well you work with the other agencies, including the FBI as well. So that's great. So, Chairman Mayorkas, I just want to ask you, what's your vision for CISA going forward, given the current threat environment and how important it is that we make sure CISA is strong and grows?
Ranking Member Katko, let me just
Seriously.
thank you for your co-leadership of this committee and your service.
ACLU.
I also want to express my thanks to this entire committee for its support of our cybersecurity mission, not only in the creation of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, but also in the new legislation, the cyber incident reporting requirements, which I think are going to really strengthen the cyber security of this entire nation. I think, Ranking Member Katko, you set forth a very important blueprint for CISA and Cybersecurity 2025. And what we need to do is to strengthen, only strengthen, the public-private partnership that really defines the cybersecurity ecosystem. The Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative that CISA has launched is really a tremendous success. And it's not just domestic, but our JCDC, as it is known by its
Maybe
acronym,
this one is it.
and our international relationships and the partnerships are going to be increasingly vital as adverse nation states only seek to perpetuate harm through the virtual
Yeah,
world.
this is it.
Just a few weeks ago, I was in Singapore for one.
So we'll flip to this real quick. This is the kind of shit that they're saying in these expansive hate crimes. Okay, this lady, they say she broke a window and then she left bacon on the door handles at a mosque. If I'm remembering this one right, this lady got tried and was actually given jail time under hate crimes legislation for just being a stupid bitch. Something that could have been handled civilly, like, hey, you get to replace the windows at the mosque. You go get to clean all their doors. And by the way, quit being a stupid bitch. But this is the kind of thing that requires jail time in the United States. And the reason they do that is so they can pump up the numbers of so-called hate crimes. People don't pay attention. The ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and groups like that are ones who help government define what hate crimes actually are. And they expanded out that definition in like 2018 or so, or it might have been before then, so that they could pump the numbers up. And by the way, I don't agree with hate crimes, because then you're charging someone for what they think instead of just charging them for the crime. If someone is murdered in a so-called hate crime, well, if they murdered somebody, they should be in prison for the rest of their natural born life, period. If it was a malice murder. Instead, we're also going to criminalize thought.
One of the world's preeminent cyber conferences, and I spoke very starkly about the threat that China poses.
Well, look, Bull Rush, just because if you're watching hot sex and it gets banned and you no longer get to see it, and just because you're not capable of it yourself, you're not completely out. Love you.
In the cybersecurity arena, and how dangerous and perilous it is for countries to allow China to actually create their cyber infrastructure, and how we need to combat that and create a level playing field of competition.
Now, again, and this is getting into a whole nother realm, though, but you can go look this stuff up. When President Trump was in office, he signed this handy-dandy little thing that really busted China's balls. One, it said that none of their technology could be used in our infrastructure. And another one stopped these programs that the Chinese government had with our colleges, in which there were people who were actually caught taking viral material and bringing them back to China. Funny thing. When Biden comes in office, and this is a guy who brags about talking to Xi Jinping all the damn time, well, he does away with Trump stuff, and now Chinese circuitry is being used in our infrastructure, to which plenty of people have said that technology that we're getting from China has built-in failure points that could be used to shut down our infrastructure. And we're back up doing these trade programs with China in our universities and on and on. Again, very dishonest people getting up and testifying in front of Congress, who are supposed to be under oath, who are supposed to be telling truth, but they're lying to your face the whole damn time.
Of fairness is, of course, how we define
And this is
We're very
a
concerned
3-hour
about
hearing, so we're going to bounce
the
around a little
prospect
bit.
of Al-Qaeda reconstituting, given the relationship with.
Because honestly, I really don't want to
Thank
subject you
everybody for
guys to
their
this whole thing.
testimony today. Subjected to such attacks after executing a search pursuant to a lawful warrant on the former president's residence, as we saw with the incident outside an FBI office in Ohio.
Yeah, I don't do this whole their truth, my truth, where truth, whatever argument. There are either things that are truth or there are things that are not. Call me a simpleton that way. But when I watch something happen live, unfiltered, and then the news puts it through their filter and gives me their truth, and they completely twist around what was actually happening, like, fuck me, maybe I have questions. And then we hear go with this dickhead talking about Trump and the raid on Mar-a-Lago and everything.
To the panel, how do you assess the current threats against elected and government officials, and how do your agency proactively protect against this violence?
Well, I'll start off and see whether Secretary Mayorkas may want to chime in. The phenomenon that you're describing, Congressman, I think has two pieces of it.
Oh, I'm very much a
First
simpleton.
is related towards violence towards all sorts of individuals in government, kind of across the spectrum, and the second is law enforcement specific. On the first, we have seen a trend over the last several years of people more and more in this country, when they're upset or angry about something, turning to violence as the way to manifest.
Now, again, this is the same guy who wanted to use the full power of the FBI to investigate parents at school board meetings. Well, someone punched a school board member. Well, maybe that school board member shouldn't have been doing stupid shit. There are certain, I am not advocating for violence, YouTube, but what I am saying is, well, when you mess with people's children, they get a little bit pissy.
And that is a very, very dangerous trend. There is a right way under the First Amendment to express how angry and upset you are about something or with somebody, but violence and violence against government officials is not it. But that is something that we've been seeing across the political spectrum now for quite a number of years. Second, I mentioned law enforcement. It is a reality that an already dangerous profession, namely law enforcement, has become more dangerous. Last year was the highest number of law enforcement officers shot and killed in the line of duty since 9/11.
Shall we mention who was doing those shootings, by the way? I can think of one right offhand that was from the Not Fucking Around Coalition that shot an officer dead in the face, then ran to Florida and then hid at the FA whatever compound and was protected by them. Shall we mention two cops sitting in their cop car while a black gang member, more than likely for an initiation, walks up and guns them down while they're sitting in their squad car? I would, me being me, all being fair, I would like to find one person flying a Gadsden flag or Sons of Liberty t-shirt or something like that who has been running around shooting police. Where are they at?
And I know personally because we've had agents shot and killed. We had a
PLA, what's up?
Shot and killed, ambushed right outside one of our small offices in Terre Haute, Indiana. And one of the things I did when I started in this job was that I said I was going to call every time an officer is shot and killed anywhere in the country in the line of duty. I was going to call the chief or the sheriff myself and express my condolences. And I've made way north of 200 of those calls. Often it's one a week. And each one of those officers killed leaves behind a family, a department, and a community that'll never be the same. And so the phenomenon that you described affects both government officials as victims across the spectrum, but also law enforcement uniquely. And it's a trend that we should all as Americans be concerned about.
Secretary Mayorkas.
Let me echo what the director said about what a tragically difficult year it has been for law enforcement. I want to reference one additional statistic, which is this year has seen the greatest number of ambushes against law enforcement officers. And there is no more noble profession than the law enforcement profession. And I know a number of you on this committee have served in that capacity. One of the areas of emphasis that the director and I have.
Now, I take some issues with law enforcement these days. I do. I think a bunch of them can be a bunch of great guys. Video the other day, 2 cops arrest a legally blind man because he's got a cane in his back pocket. And he flat out just refused to give ID, which doesn't need to give ID. Arresting people for not wearing masks, which is something that we saw quite a bit of during the height of this COVID shit. Unconstitutional red flag orders. So I will say this, police, if you desire people's respect, I would say quit enforcing unconstitutional bullshit. It's funny. I got a call the other day. I was at work, got a call from the Sheriff's Association, whoever it was, wanting money. And a couple of my guys were standing around me. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll send you guys money. You send me a list of sheriffs that will not enforce unconstitutional laws, and I will send them money. To which that guy politely said, well, thank you for your time, sir. You want me to support a thin blue line? Don't do unconstitutional shit. It's horrible that cops get shot. It shouldn't happen. These cops have been ambushed. But guess what? It ain't by nobody wearing a goddamn Gadsden flag or a Sons of Liberty shirt. And remember, all this is for a domestic spying bill, and this was just before all this violent, extremist, militant MVE shit came out.
I've had is to be sure to disseminate timely and actionable information to state, local, tribal, territorial, and campus law enforcement so that we equip our local communities to understand the threat landscape before them and prevent violent acts from occurring in the first instance.
Thank you. That was a quick 5 minutes, and I will yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes, Mr. McCall.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all 3 of you for your service. As Mr. Katko mentioned, I know it's not an easy job.
Sitting there lying to the American public
back
all
in the
day.
day. And I want to, in my position, being a leader now in foreign affairs, with the collapse of Afghanistan, what I've seen is a rise in our being there.
Let's skip through
Port of
a few
entry
things.
is a
Hold on.
way they do this, or what worries me now is the situation at the border. The fact that
Let's talk about that.
And the combination of the Taliban taking over, Mr. Haqqani, a wanted terrorist, being their Minister of Interior, now Minister really of Security is what he is, harboring al-Zawahiri, who is bin Laden's top lieutenant, in his own house. And I applaud the administration for targeting him and taking him out, but we don't have eyes and ears anymore. We've lost access to Bagram, and now China's in there with the lithium, and we'll probably get access to Bagram, that being the end result. My question is, maybe to the director of the FBI, what is your concern about the threat combination of this unmanaged, wide open border situation and the threat from Al-Qaeda and ISIS coming out of Afghanistan, not to mention the fentanyls and all the other bad stuff. And then lastly, the terror watch list, as I understand, there are 98 of them. When I was chair of this committee, we would get briefed on those individuals, not just the numbers. It's my understanding this committee is not getting the full briefing on who are these people that have attempted to get into the United States, much less the ones that already have. Director Ray?
Well, Congressman, you raised a number of, I think, very legitimate and important issues. When it comes to the border in particular, it is a very significant and important challenge. There's a whole wide array of criminal threats that come in terms of drugs, money, guns, violence. And you mentioned some of that in your comments. There's
Then
also,
why
of
not
course,
stop
a
it?
concern from a national security perspective. Any port of entry is a possible vector that a terrorist organization could choose to exploit. Now, historically, foreign terrorist organizations have not chosen illegal immigration as the way to see
Bullshit.
They've usually preferred to
Sorry.
either recruit somebody here or send somebody in legally just because of the risks.
Right.
But we have seen, over the last 5 years, an increase in the number of KSTs who've been encountered, who've attempted to cross. And so that is obviously something we remain very concerned about. And you may have seen early summer, we announced the indictment of an individual who was trying to bring foreign nationals in a plot to kill former President Bush.
And thanks for bringing that up. That was one other thing. My time's getting ready to expire, but I guess the point for this committee to really evaluate the threat to respond on a policy basis.
Mike, what's
These
happening?
98 people are, where they're from. We don't really have any identifying information to
Yeah,
know
pretty much
who
their
they are,
lips are
where they're
moving.
coming from.
They're
how they-
breathing.
What was
They
their
might be
motivation
typing.
to get into the United States? And so I would ask it that maybe, Mr. Chairman, that I think this committee, when you and I,
And understand, this is all circus. This is all show. Because if it wasn't just show, we could solve the problems at our borders. Yeah, I am very much allergic to bullshit. When that meter starts to kick up there, I get these sneezes that go off. Usually, some of them might tend to be laced with a bit of profanity here and there.
The letter mentions a focused effort to help sector risk management agencies identify systemically important critical entities in their sector. How is DHS approaching this task?
Thank you very much, Congressman. I believe I caught the gist of your question. We are doing quite a number of things to address cybersecurity, and specifically in the critical infrastructure arena. Of course, the mandatory cyber incident reporting legislation that you.
Ray, how would you characterize the ongoing threat of retaliatory Russian cyber?
And the top threat to individual rights and freedoms for Americans from sea to shining sea, Mr. Ray, is the weaponization of the FBI against the American citizens that you've sworn to serve.
Now this is all grandstanding, but he actually starts to talk about the meat and potatoes of this bill and what it actually does, which is the complete weaponization of the FBI and other intelligence sources against the American people. And I'll have to go back and find the video that I did on this bill.
Secretary Mayorkas, for the record, are you aware or have you authorized CBP agents to release illegal aliens into America without identifying, screening, or vetting them properly, or harvesting even basic biometric data like fingerprints?
Congressman, our nation's sovereignty stands strong, and our brave men and women in the border.
Listen to that bullshit ass answer. Congressman, our sovereignty stands strong. You didn't answer the question, and that's what they do in these 5-minute fucking just idiotic sessions. These guys should be under oath, getting questioned. And when they lie under oath, they should be put in fucking jail. But no.
Border Patrol and throughout U.S. Customs.
Are you aware, have you authorized CBP agents to
thoroughly-
release illegal aliens into America without having properly vetted, identified them, or collected at least basic biometric data like fingerprints?
Congressman,
I mean, you got millions coming across.
Congressman, our
Gentleman from, Ms. Higgins, allow the secretary to
It's
answer.
my time, Mr. Chairman. If I want to
well-
reclaim my time, I will.
Well,
Yeah, I'm going to move on without an answer. Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mike, let me pause this for a sec. But yeah, all of the guys out there in the sphere, which I've showed 3D printed stuff, all of these guys out here who are doing this insanely cool work, 3D printing. Yeah, these platforms are going after you. And look at what's happened to fucking Ralph. Ralph has never done a single illegal thing. He's never promoted hate, nothing. He had nerve enough to show videos on how to build things that aren't freaking illegal. But they're going to go after him. Meanwhile, you can go online and look, you can still find ISIS putting shit on social media. You can find all these other fucking whatever groups that actually are enemies of this republic putting stuff online. But now they're going to go after Ralph. They're going to shut down fucking anybody who print, shoot, repeat. Cool videos. Seriously good content. But oh no, there's the scary things. Look, if you go deep enough into YouTube and some other social media platforms, you can find all the kitty sniffing, touching, feeling content you will ever want to find. They say they can't find that, but if I show a gun or something on a stream, they can find me in seconds. I'm surprised they didn't shut down a stream I did the other night. Because like on there, I said I was going to take some chances. Now, I don't have a big channel, so there's no wonder they're ignoring my ass right now. But I promise you, I will never advocate for anything on this channel that is ever going to deprive someone else wrongfully of life, liberty, or property. I would say I won't promote anything that is illegal because, let's face it, they are making pistol braces illegal now just through a rule-making process.
you asking for me to yield you time?
No, I'm the chair.
Then I'm going to reclaim my
No,
time.
Look, we don't.
Moving on,
No.
Secretary
look,
Mayorkas.
The gentleman from.
Are you interrupting my time, Mr. Chairman? Or are you
well,
requesting me to use your time?
I'm trying to make sure that we conduct.
You're interfering with my 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Well, then the gentleman will.
If you request me to yield you time, I'll give you time.
No, but that's not the procedure.
But that is the
It
procedure.
is not. It
Yes,
is not.
it is.
So.
Of course it is.
Look.
I
Mr.
reclaim my time and I want this time back. Secretary Mayorkas,
Look.
have you used your authority to suppress exculpatory
Secretary,
evidence
Mr. Secretary.
presented by
Yeah, don't let the man ask his questions, interrupt him the whole time, so you can protect your witnesses. That's what the chairman of this, Benny, is trying to do, and Benny's an absolute moron. I spend way too much time watching this shit.
CBP agents who've come under public attack and condemnation by DHS and the Biden administration. Have you used your authority to suppress exculpatory evidence presented by CBP agents who've come under public attack and condemnation by you and the Biden administration?
2 points, if I may, Congressman. Number one, in response to your second question, I don't even know what you're referring to. And with respect to your first
I'll take
question,
that as that you're on the record as
US
saying
Customs-
no,
U.S.
that you have
Customs-
not used your authority to suppress exculpatory evidence. If you're an honorable man, then obviously you should be able to say no to that. Who would suppress exculpatory evidence? Is your answer no?
I don't even know what you're referring to, Congressman.
You will.
Now, guys, do you remember that handy dandy story not too long back that said CBP agents on horseback were whipping these poor people trying to cross our borders? And then when you actually saw the pictures of it from the right angle, what you found out was it was the reins on the guy's horse, and he was swinging his reins to turn his horse, not whipping at the poor little bastard trying to come into the country illegally.
And if I may, in
Secretary
response-
Mayorkas, have you used your authority to retaliate against DHS agents who served on special details during the Trump administration, agents identified by your administration as conservatives or Trump supporters?
Once again, Congressman, I don't even know what you're referring to.
You're before Congress. I'm going to take that as a no.
Once again, Congressman, I'm going to lie dead to your face.
Through your authority, Secretary Mayorkas, have you encouraged your chain of command to suppress basic law enforcement actions at the border and harass or victimize or intimidate experienced frontline law enforcement agents at the border using internal investigations and threats of disciplinary action or transfer
I need more
in order
coffee.
to force those agents to comply with DHS policies that actually injure the security of our homeland and are contrary to the sworn oath of those agents? Is that the culture you've created?
Congressman, I don't even know what you're referring to.
You will.
And I am.
Secretary Mayorkas,
building
final
a
question,
culture
good sir.
Honor and
It's been
service
rumored
and nobility throughout the Department of Homeland Security. That is
you
what I
represent
am- that is what I am
nobility,
dedicated-
Secretary Mayorkas.
Congressman, that is what I am dedicated to.
It's been rumored, Secretary, that you're going to resign prior to January the 3rd. Is any truth to those rumors?
That is a false rumor.
All right. We look forward to seeing you in January. Director Wray, does the FBI have confidential human sources? Did the FBI have confidential human sources embedded within the January 6th protesters on January 6th of 2021?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being opened?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It
in
should
what
be
I
a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's
on January
time
the
has
6th.
expired.
You should not read anything into my decision
Ms.
not to share information.
Director Wray,
confidential.
gentleman's time.
Yes, they did have people there stirring up the January 6th people. Some of their people, whether paid actors or actual agents, were some of the ones there stirring up the people on January 6th, instigating. And none of these people will ever get called to the floor.
Has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All of our witnesses are here today as guests of the committee to discuss threats to the homeland. As our guest, we owe our witnesses respect. And the subject
I don't know them a goddamn bit of respect. Matter of fact, most of these Congress people sitting up in Congress right now, I don't know a damn bit of respect to.
Subject matter of today's hearing deserves.
I asked them about border security. We acknowledge, we agree that border security does not begin and end at the border. If a threat gets to the border, we've got a problem.
Good deal, Warsaw. Yeah, dude, I got to take care of some shit because, hell, I still want to get that top rail for the AK that you've recommended. There's a bunch of other stuff I want to get, but yeah, bills ain't no fun.
So my question to you is, do you feel like we have enough, or do we need additional resources to be able to coordinate intel? I guess the next step is lessons learned. In 4 years, we will have the World Cup in the United States.
Have a very, very well exercised and
Coordination exists and is enhanced moving forward.
Well, one thing, obviously, it would be a long list, and we welcome the discussion, but the top thing on my list would be to urge Congress to reauthorize Section 702 when it comes up for renewal at the end of next year, because that is the critical tool to understanding foreign threats, which may have, again, foreign threats.
Come on, let me skip through this.
Just committee to make sure that we're coordinating with our committee to make sure that we're in this country legally. And we continue to focus on the border, on refugees, when the bigger issue is working with our allies around the world and other unfriends to make sure we stop those threats from happening again. What do you need from us to make sure that that type of coordination
backed up too far
exists and is enhanced
at the end of next year, because that is the critical tool to understanding.
very much needed, and that is our Countering Unmanned Aerial Systems Authority. And I think that our budget
continue to pose a threat to the United States. You speak of drug-related crime, money laundering, human smuggling. Then on page 15, in further detail as it relates to human smuggling, you say at our southwest border, we are experiencing historic levels of encounters. And we know that those are numbers that you referred to are borne out by the statistics that your agency puts out each and every month. Now, for the 8th straight month, we have had more than 200,000 encounters along our southwest border. Fiscal year 2022.
Look at this. We talk about instigators being in with some sort of group. This whole kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer thing that came down. Well, come to find out, almost everybody involved in that group was a Fed. One of the Feds was sleeping with one of the guys, trying to get him pumped up in this kidnapping scheme. All they did was found a few weak-minded individuals and then manipulated the shit out of them. And then it's blown out to be this huge domestic terror plot. It's just the fucking sheer insanity of some of this.
Those numbers were more than 2,378,000. Fiscal year 2021, 1,734,000. Compare those numbers to the last year of the prior administration, fiscal year 2020, those numbers were 450 the border. I ask you once again today, do you still stand by your statement based on those statistical figures that the border is closed, the border is secure, and that we have not lost operational control?
Congressman Guest, let me share a few thoughts, because I think it's very important to put the challenge at our southern border, and it's a very serious challenge.
Crumpy's cranking something up, so.
It is a challenge that is not specific or exclusive to our southern border. This is a challenge that exists throughout the hemisphere. And let me give a very powerful...
And Ms. Mayor, because I'm not trying to interrupt you, I have very limited time, and so I'd like to focus my question.
Let me pause this, and then we'll comment on Crumpy's stream a little bit. In fact, I'll tell him I'm stealing his shit. What's going on, Wolf? Why is the chat and everything not loading on this goddamn page? because I still want to go through. I want to keep listening to some of this stuff, but I don't want to completely rob out Crump's stream. But I want to hear what my man's saying too. So if you guys don't know, Crump's bringing up a stream. So flip open another tab. Let's all listen to Crumpy together. And then if you guys want, you can jump back over to mine, and then we'll share some more fun and exciting, painful, your government's lying straight to your face kind of deal.
I'm sure you heard about the mass shooting at UVA, but did you hear about the mass stabbing at the University of Idaho? I didn't think so. Let's go ahead and talk about it.
I love my man Crump. Did you hear about this? Well, maybe they're lying to you on something else.
What's up, Wolverines, and welcome back to the channel. My name is John Crump, and today we are brought to you by Lear Capital.
God, Warsaw, I might have to pull the trigger on that through alternate means.
Silver. And right now, if you sign up for a Lear Capital,
I seriously might have to.
You can get up to $15,000 in bonus
just because I want one. On your first order. And let's face it, Zenico is way out there right now due to import bans and all that.
And that's where you should too. Lear Capital has $3 billion in trusted transactions.
PSA ain't Zenico, but it's probably
score on Trustpilot. And right now,
it's well up there.
Lear Capital Advantage IRA, you can get that.
Now look at Texas Weapons Systems. While he's doing his commercial, Texas Weapons Systems.
Their free investors guide.
Oh God, so many more with top rails and shit like that. And of course, Rob from AK Operators Union. I've looked at a bunch of the stuff he covers. So yeah, I think you got me sold on the PSA. So I gotta get one.
Today we're going to be talking about a tragedy that happened at UVA where 4 students were shot and killed. But there's also some other tragedies that didn't make the news, like what happened in Idaho, where 4 students recently was stabbed. All 4 students died. And then out in LA, 20 people got hit by a car intentionally.
So wait a second. You're telling me that more people got killed by a car than guns?
Don't get all the coverage. So I wanted to bring on a guest and talk about.
So you're telling me the media narrative is being filtered in a way to maybe control people.
I'm not trying to downplay that, but then you have the University of Idaho where 4 students were tragically stabbed to death. All right, I'm going to bring on my co-host over at John Crump Live, and we're going to talk about it. I want you guys to know who this guy is because he is one of the smartest people I know, and I'm sure he has a lot to say.
You're telling me that maybe they're lying to us.
Find him at Flying Rich on YouTube.
Thanks, John. That's tough to live up to that introduction, but thank you.
Why do you think that the media don't talk about tragedies?
Oh, can I wave my hand? Can I wave my hand?
As much
can I talk about why they don't talk about it?
Okay, so we're talking about 2 incidents, particularly the shooting and the stabbing at colleges. One, 4 people, well, actually both 4 people died, correct?
While they're doing this, let me look something.
So same loss of life, different method. And so you could say one is more sensational because it's a gun, so it gets more eyes. You know, it's more. First, we got to realize one, news is not news. News is entertainment. And if the story is entertaining, people gravitate towards it.
God
but
damn it.
I don't know. The capability of killing 4 people with a knife is a bigger challenge than killing 4 people with a firearm. Do you think that would be more sensational? Then it goes into what is the narrative they want to communicate? What information do they want to push to the public? And do they want the public to believe? Do they want the public to believe knives are bad, or do they want the public to believe guns are bad?
I can answer. I can answer.
Is they want the public to believe guns are bad.
Do you think that they would go after the knives if they were able to disarm us from
guns? Oh yeah, that'd be the next thing.
Well, and we have incidences of that occurring. If you look at England, where there's virtually no firearms, handguns. Let me say that specifically. Or in China. So
you're telling me I can
Japan,
search
these places? They have stabbing. So now in England, I read a story that they went after somebody and took his screwdrivers like a repairman. So you can't have sharp knives in London anymore. I don't know how you eat steak, but that's just kind of crazy. So yeah, they're gonna. The point here is evil will find a way. It's not that.
How many of us have said that
well,
before?
This thing is bad, we need to take it away from somebody, or this thing is bad, we need to take it away from somebody. It's the heart of the people are evil, and evil will find a way. And the only thing that defeats evil is good people armed and skilled in violence.
Yeah,
Evil is
in
always
England,
going to
for one
exist.
thing that they do, I play Call of Duty, and you can follow me on my gaming channel.
And evil
John
people
Pro
are
Gaming,
always
and watch me play Call of Duty, Cyberpunk, and I'm
going to
making
find
fun of it.
ways
But one of
to
the
commit their
guys
evil
I play
acts.
with is from England, and he says they sensationalize what they call knife crime, which sounds a lot like our gun crime.
For sure. Yeah, they're going to keep disarming people
Okay, here's
until you only have
350.
bad words.
What's the end goal of disarming people?
Well, it's realistically, it's a human right to be able to defend yourself, your life, and the lives of loved ones. If you disarm people, then
So I found
evil
that bill I was
prevails
looking for.
because you can kick in any door. Like there's laws in England. Basically, if somebody kicks in your door, you can't do anything. They can just take whatever you want, and they're enacting laws like that in Illinois. That's going to come up next year, where basically, if somebody kicks in your door, sits down, starts eating dinner, you can't even call the cops. You can't even do anything about that. And the only thing they're going to hold you in bond for is first-degree murder, not second-degree murder or rape.
Or kidnapping.
Those things are going to let you right out.
Kidnapping, rape, murder, robbery.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's really
no bond.
It's a deterioration of the civil society. And the concept of a civil society is that I get up, I go to work, I earn a living, hopefully
Take care
I
of
do
my
something to
family.
help other people. I support my family. We have a normal life that's unmolested by evil or crime.
The biggest evil
And
that
it
molests
seems
my
that
life?
they're
Government.
paving the way, making it easier for crimes to be committed on good people.
Yeah. So, do you think that this is some type
me flip
of
back over.
conspiracy by them, or do you think it's just a fundamental?
I go. Yes, it's a giant ass conspiracy.
I think all of the above. So, a couple of things. I always believe that there's the useful idiots, and then I believe that there's the people that are true believers.
Mike, you ain't wrong
firearms are
at
bad.
all.
And John and I both have a number of firearms. So almost everybody I know has
they got
a number of firearms. We're not getting mad and solving problems.
I'll
with
be
our
willing to bet
firearms.
with all the
We're
firearms they own,
respectful, and in
or
fact,
own, none of their
person
firearms
with
have
a
ever went
firearm,
out and,
like a
and hurt
CCW
somebody.
holder is 20 times less likely to commit a crime than a police officer. So we're actually more law-abiding than the police.
Rich, you
as
can't
concealed
say
carry holders.
facts like that.
So the argument that they make about pulling guns off the street,
Jesus, Rich.
realistically, you want more of me and John and all of our other friends out there with concealed carry permits, because one,
Well,
we're gonna
actually, let's
actively
do away with that
work
whole concealed
to
carry
keep
permit
ourselves
bullshit,
safe and
Rich.
keep ourselves out of trouble and not commit crimes, because we don't want to risk losing our right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I do like how you quoted Marx, because that seems to be one of their heroes.
Oh, that
Marx
was
is the guy that
Keep
came up
America
with the
Safe
Useful
Act.
Idiots thing when he was talking about communism.
Sure.
I'm not sure if people caught that reference or not. But yeah, it looks like it's right out of their playbook.
Yeah, so the other thing is, if you create a problem, if you create lawlessness, where when I lived in New York and worked in Manhattan, I traveled everywhere on the subway, and I talk to people now, and they're like, "Heck no, I wouldn't go on the subway." When you create a problem like that, lawlessness, where you can't, go to and from work without being accosted either by somebody
I
begging,
forget
or
Guns
by
goes live
somebody,
in 30 minutes.
holding you up for your money, or just a violent attack. Like there's all
So
these
if you guys
sucker
don't
punch
follow
attacks
Guns
you
and
see
Barbecue,
people
you guys should
reporting
be
and
following
conditioning.
Guns and Barbecue.
Which are dangerous, and people
He'll be
have
going
died
live in
because
about
of that.
30, which
Correct.
I'll be shut
Correct.
down before then.
And then people will say, well, since I can't
Hell, I
have a
might even
gun,
jump on Guns and
please
Barbecue
help
while
me.
I'm running
Or
around going
the
to
guns are the
do
problem.
things before I go to work.
Like if you take New York City or
You normally got to
Manhattan,
link up.
New York State or the 5 boroughs of New York City,
It's like
most people.
It's like Lord of the Rings, where you put on the ring and you become evil.
Well, most people don't have guns, and the only people that do have guns are violent criminals. So you're like, yeah, let's get rid of all the guns. You have 5 counties in New York State where people are brainwashed to think firearms are the problem, and if you remove the firearms, there'll be no more problem. And what I think people need to do is compare and contrast that to places like England, China, Japan, where there are virtually no firearms. Then compare and contrast that to places like Virginia, where you have carry permits, or Florida, where you have carry permits, where they're liberal about your Second Amendment rights, that you have the ability to keep and bear arms. And if you look at the crime rate of New York City, where it's virtually
Mexico, yeah. Mexico has serious gun laws. That hadn't stopped the cartels.
That to,
that
West
doesn't
Palm
stop
Beach,
the
Miami,
gangs.
any metro in Florida where people can carry, there's much less crime because people are more worried about committing a crime on somebody who's armed or a bystander,
Mike,
dog, taking action.
These people have no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
As the saying goes.
Right.
So if they F around and find out, they don't want to find out. But yeah, like I go to New York a lot, and I understand exactly what you are saying. And we have to take responsibility.
I ain't going to
for
New York.
ourselves. And I think a lot of what they're going for is trying to strip that responsibility, to try to make us dependent on the government.
Trump's 100% right.
dependent
This
on
is
the
all to
system.
make us more dependent.
And here's where the useful idiot comes in, is, anybody.
I'm
in
an
political
idiot. I'm
office
just not a
has
useful
protection.
idiot.
They have armed protection. But somebody like you or me, we don't have Gavin DeBecker armed guards protecting us or our family. And where I live in a rural part of Palm Beach, believe it or not. And
hate
if there was an
crimes,
axe murder, or
authorization.
like 5 guys went into a neighbor's house with firearms and started shooting the place up, I probably wouldn't even hear it. And even if somebody did hear and report it, there's one sheriff for like 10 square miles. So pretty much we're on our own.
And probably after they get done, I want to read through these little short kicks real fast, and then I'll be done with my spiel
They're
for the
not
day.
providing me 24-hour
I'm just more
armed services.
hanging out, giving my back a
And they
break.
have no legal obligation. That was decided in the Supreme Court to protect me.
Yeah, the Supreme Court says the police have no legal obligation to protect, even though it says to protect and serve. But it is what it is. You are your own first responder. Thank you, Rich, so much for coming on. I just wanted to introduce people to you if they don't know who you are, because you have one of my favorite channels, and you are a very smart guy. People can follow you, and I insist that they do, over at Flying Rich on YouTube. Don't go to Fly Rich, and don't go to Flying Rich.
Tortown, you're right about that.
Flying Rich, one word. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, John.
All right, guys, let me know if you like this format. I just wanted to introduce to you.
And everybody make sure you leave Crump some comments and stuff in there too.
John Crump Live. So you can go ahead and follow Rich, and I highly suggest that you do. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, Warsaw posted, man.
Stay ever vigilant, stay ever free, keeping the fight. I am out of here. Wolverines.
Hell, Warsaw, you should be a mod. You should be able to post whatever you want. Let me flip back over here. Yeah, post it up. So let me get to this, because like I said, I'm gonna end my stream. I gotta finish getting ready for work, and then barbecue should be coming on here in a little bit. But this entire hearing that was done, where they're mixing all this domestic and Iran and my home security, This bill right here, I finally found the text of it again. HR 350 is the bill that they're pushing here. So let's look at this. So there's going to be creation of all these other offices inside offices that are already inside of offices. So domestic terrorism unit. Funny, I thought we were already taking care of domestic terrorism. All right, there's authorized a domestic terrorism unit in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis of the Department of Homeland Security, YAVUL, which shall be responsible for monitoring and analyzing domestic terrorism activity. When they're talking about monitoring and analyzing, what they're talking about is going through your fucking social media. I would have no doubt at all whatsoever that during a course of a stream like this, whenever I mention certain terms like anti-government and the government sucks and they're all a bunch of lying sacks, that there are algorithms that will run, and all of a sudden I've got some Fed glowy monitoring my social media. I've got no doubt about that. Monitor away. You must not live a very interesting life. Domestic Terrorism Office. There's authorized a domestic terrorism office in the counterterrorism section of the National Security Division of the Department of Justice, or rationally put, the Department of Injustice these days, because we don't have a justice system anymore. We definitely don't have a Department of Justice. Nah, that's been gone a long time. Which shall be responsible for investigating and prosecuting incidents of domestic terror, which shall be headed by Domestic Terrorism Council. Wonder who this council would be. Later might, which shall coordinate with Civil Rights Division on domestic terror matters. That may also be hate crimes incidents, which we know that they're pumping the numbers up on because they have changed definitions of said hate crimes. Too many choices, brother. Yes, the NFA is absolutely unconstitutional. It always has been unconstitutional. And if you were lucky enough to see some of the streams or actually read through the hearings for the 34 NFA, they knew it was unconstitutional when they passed it. They also knew it would fuck over more, I won't say law-abiding citizens anymore, but I will say citizens that were not a threat to any other citizen. They knew it would screw them over. So, let's see. Then they go through the staffing in here, have an adequate number of employees to perform required duties. I like how they leave that open-ended. Have not less than one employee to ensure in compliance with civil rights and civil liberties laws and regulations. What you can be 100% sure of is if this employee will be the one trying to figure out how to get around your fucking constitutional rights. That's what that employee's job will be. Don't believe me? Well, if they can spy on every bit of my social media activity, do you really think I have a right to privacy anymore? Well, it's out in the public sphere. Now, wait a second. That's like me talking to someone at a bar or talking to a bunch of people at a bar. Yes, I'm out in a social environment, but is that for the government to come spy on? No. But Google and them will hand everything over in your private emails. Think you really got a right to privacy? Requires one employee to undergo annual anti-bias training. Oh, man. Brother Burnaby, you take care of yourself, man. I know you, well, just put that, well, you take care of yourself, man. Hopefully you're doing all right. Hit us up if you need anything. Sunset, 10 years after the date of the enactment. Then they got some stuff in them here about biannual reporting, contents. Hey, it's all just one big domestic spying bill. Just say something that the government doesn't agree with. And they get to just jump all over you and dig all in your social media accounts. And, well, you're a domestic extremist if you have like anti-government symbols hanging all over your walls. Funny. So it's weird to me because this set me off. The whole thing that started this whole rant this morning, which the other video and shit that I did, was Christopher Wray, and which we didn't get to that section in this part, but getting caught pumping up the numbers on domestic extremism and what they are calling domestic extremism and changing definitions and pumping up numbers and all the way through. It's all a system of control, every bit of it. And normies, people who aren't paying attention to this stuff, who are just watching MSNBC, fuck me running, I thought I had a painful life, just buy into this shit. They don't ask any questions. They won't do any research. They call people like Project Veritas who call the stuff out. They don't call them journalists, even though they're doing some of the best journalism out there these days. Hell, they want those people put in jail. All the court cases that Veritas has gone through, whether you like them, love them, hate them, hell, I don't give a shit. They've been right, and they've been truthful in their journalistic endeavors. They called out a lot of stuff about the 2020 election. All that gets shut down. They called out a lot of shit about Planned Parenthood. Well, that shit gets shut down. Well, yeah, there's a... Yeah, I've got great love for this country. I really do. I've got great love for at least the freedoms that we have now. Although we should have many, many more freedoms that have just been stripped away through, 200 years worth of shitting on our Constitution. Used to believe voting mattered. We used to be a republic. Every time these Democrats mention democracy, just understand they want mob rule. Because they know they have more useful idiots out there who are uninformed, who will always vote for them. And then they can always push whatever unconstitutional bullshit they want. And the Biden administration is stacking judges up on courts that will uphold all this unconstitutional shit. Look at Oregon. What is it? The 114 that just passed. There's nothing unconstitutional about 114. Nothing. But it'll go to the courts, and there are circuit courts that will uphold this horse shit in the hopes that we can get it to a Supreme Court that's not packed yet, and maybe the Supreme Court will go in and tell them to, no, you can't do this shit. Rights are rights. Just because you have more people voting for something than I have voting for something doesn't mean you get to strip my rights away. And I did it for a long time in my life. I accepted a lot of this shit. Oh, it's a law. I never went into, hey, well, maybe that law is a bunch of horse shit. Maybe we're stripping away people's personal freedoms and choices. And maybe we're criminalizing shit that never should have been criminalized in the first place. The direct link to some of this, or analogy to some of it, is that countries that have finally got away from all of their very rigid drug laws have figured out how to deal with drugs without throwing people in jail for having drugs. So in other words, you can do whatever drug you want as long as you don't turn around and wrongfully deprive someone else of life, liberty, or property. I've got no issues with that. Go be a zombie on the fucking street. But if your zombie drugged out ass walks in front of my car in the middle of traffic and you become a speed bump, well, maybe that's on you and you shouldn't have been fucked up on the side of the road. And maybe, just maybe, we could take care of some of this by, I don't know, treating them like people with addictions instead of treating them in a lot of cases. Because a lot of cases, some of them have never committed a crime. They're just addicted to something. Maybe we can treat them. Because I guarantee you, I've been there, you can't keep drugs out of prison. A drug addict in prison will just be a drug addict in prison until they get out to the street to become, well, guess what? An even bigger drug addict. So, little things, the more you wake up and the more you look at things, supposedly a free person in the United States, the more you see, well, maybe things ain't all that free no more. Maybe the government has way too much control. That 12-week government. Hold on. Announced yesterday by the NY Fed, 12-week government trial of digital currency, dubbed Project Cedar, begins this month. U.S. Bank Wells Fargo. Oh, the insanity. A lot of this, when you see the government stepping into it, the government's not stepping into it because they have really good ideas about, I don't know, freedom. The government's been looking to step on cryptocurrencies for a long time because they can't control cryptocurrencies as well. They've been looking to go to a full digital currency because then they can control where your currency goes. So now we look at this 12-week government trial of digital currencies. Oh, boy, oh, boy. Thanks for that one, Doc. Now you gave me another monster underneath my fucking bed to think about. Yeah, well, look at this. So, and you're right. If you take this democracy to its useful end, well, then if I get enough people on my side, I could automatically vote for slavery and it would be held constitutional because the majority wanted it done. And I've said it before, I'm surprised the Democrats haven't packed the Supreme Court yet. I still believe that's coming. And they're still talking. I heard Chucky Schumer talking about it again the other day about destroying the filibuster because they don't have that supermajority in the Senate. I find these last elections very troubling, to say the least. 2 years of the Biden administration basically destroying the U.S. economy, making us complete mockery on a world scale. And somehow people still voted for Democrats. Now, in some places, I know there are some Democrats that are never going to change. They are completely uninformed morons. But in other places, I find it awfully fishy that we will take weeks and weeks to count votes until we get the desired outcome from a vote. Yeah, Doc, you're asking some very serious questions. And if a lot of people in this government have their way, well, guess what? People don't think about the amount of influence the government has over everything that you own or everything that you do. unless you start listening to some short fat moron like me who actually is realizing some of these things. And it's awfully damn alarming. All right, guys. I'm going to end this one here. I love you guys. You guys all rock, to say the least, man. You guys are actually ones that are awake. And maybe by doing some of this stuff that we actually wake some others up. Hell, I was asleep at one point. Maybe we wake more people up. So we'll see where it goes. But all of you guys be cool. All you perps be cool. Keep that thing on you at all times. Don't be prone to violence, but be ready to react to a situation with violence if needed. Say that. Be that peaceful person that will react violently if you have to, if someone pushes you there. But never violence just for violence sake. Say that. Love you guys. I'm out. I'm going to finish getting ready for work and go, I don't know, feed some homeless or something.